Hey guys, what's going on? It's Clever Techie, and in this video, we're going to learn JavaScript arrays. So this is the syntax for creating arrays in JavaScript. As you can see, there's a numeric and associative array, and those are the two types of arrays that we can create in JavaScript. And the way that we create a numeric array is to use square brackets with a list of values separated by comma. And when we create the array in this way, the array keys are automatically created for us. So you can see down here that these are going to be our array keys. And this is one way to visualize a numeric array. So you can see that this is the array that we just talked about. And you can see that the key 0 is associated with value 1, key 1 is associated with value 2, etc. And just one important thing to remember is that keys always start their count from 0. So that's why keys are counting to 4 and the actual values are counting to 5. And here on the right hand side you can see another array, and this is just to show you guys that the arrays can have all kinds of data types. So even though this array is numeric, it's still numeric, it can hold all kinds of data types instead of just numbers. And the other array is associative, and this is the way that we create an associative array using the curly braces instead of the square brackets. And the associative array just means that we have a string key instead of a named key, and inside of the curly braces we have a key value pair separated with a colon, and we separate each key value pair with a comma in the same way that we do here. And if you guys have been following my videos for a while, you can see that I'm doing a lot of changes. First of all, I've switched over to Visual Studio Code, and this is a much better text editor than NetBeans. And you can see that I've created the outline, which is all the topics that we're going to be covering in this video. And we also have syntax summary, which we can just copy, go to find, and then we can jump to any section of the source code. So that makes it easier for us to jump around the code and see what's going on if we need to return back to the video or the file and remember some of the things that we did. So there's going to be a lot of changes and improvements coming to my videos, and the ones that are going to be benefiting the most are going to be Clever Techie Patreon subscribers, because I realized that you guys mostly subscribe because of these source code files, and that's where I decided to make a lot of improvements. So we're going to have the source, the syntax summary, we're going to have the outline, and you can jump to any section of the file like I already said. And we're going to have console with code examples, and also I'm going to be including all the graphics, all kinds of visuals from previous videos, so that it's nicely organized in the workspace. And you guys are going to love all these new improvements. We're going to learn a lot about Visual Studio Code. It comes with a lot of extensions that we're going to cover. We can switch over to all kinds of different themes. And I'm really excited about these new improvements. So look forward to more changes, and I'm gonna be creating a video explaining what I've been working on and what's coming to my Patreons. Alright, now let's go back to JavaScript arrays. So you can see that we have an outline here, and this is what we're gonna be covering in this video. So the first thing we're gonna cover is declaring the arrays. And there's two ways of declaring empty arrays in JavaScript, and you can see over here that I've already provided the syntax. So this is what the source code file is always going to include. So all we have to do is type let, which is how we declare the variable in JavaScript, and then the name of the array, just like the syntax says. I'm gonna name this array empty equals, and then square brackets. So that will create an empty array. And the second way is to use the keyword new, and then let new empty equals new array. And this is a second way of creating an empty array. So you can either use this method or this one. It doesn't really matter. It works the same way. So now I'm gonna go ahead and launch live server and go to web developer web console. So this web console is what we're going to be working with, and I'm just going to go ahead and type empty and new empty, and you can see that we have 2 empty arrays now. And now let's go ahead and create some arrays with actual values in them. So first we're going to go ahead and create numeric arrays. So we're going to jump to that section, and this is the syntax for creating a numeric array. So we're going to say let, I'm going to name this array list, and I'm just going to fill it with 5 values. So it's the same array that you've seen in this picture here. Alright, so let's go ahead and create a new array, and I'm gonna name this one mixed, and this one is also going to be the numeric array. I'm gonna use another way of creating it with the keyword new, and I'm gonna go ahead and fill it with the mixed value data types. So remember that this array is still going to be numeric. It's just going to hold all these kinds of different data types. So now if we go back to web console, I'm going to type list and mixed. You can check what the array actually looks like. So list, you can see that we've already gone through that. So this is a key 0 associated with value 1. This is a key 4 associated with value 5. And it also shows the length of the array, which is the total number of values inside of our array. So this is a really handy way of exploring what our arrays looks like. And in the mix, you can also see how each key is associated with a value, and you can see that the array is still numeric. It just has all these different data types. Also, we can use a method called length to get the length of our array. So if I type list.length, it's going to give me 5, and if I type mixed.length, I'm going to get a 5 as well. And let's see what happens if we type empty.length. We get 0 because there's no values inside of that array. So that's just a handy way of getting the total length of the arrays. It returns the total amount of values inside of the array, which is 5. Alright, now let's move on to creating associative arrays. So I'm going to copy this, hit find, and jump to that section. And you can see this is the syntax for creating associative arrays. So it's basically, we use a string instead of the numeric value, and we have to specify the key name ourselves. So let's go ahead and create this array. First of all, we're going to create an empty array, and I'm going to name it elements. And now let's go ahead and fill this array with string keys. So I'm gonna say water. I'm gonna create 5 elements: water, fire, earth, air, and ether. Fire is gonna be force. So as you can see now, we're creating the keys ourselves instead of letting JavaScript generate them for us. And I'm gonna show you guys another way of doing this in just a minute. Alright, so now we have an associative array called elements with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 values inside of it. Now let's go ahead and jump to web console and see what it actually looks like. So type elements, and you can see that now we, instead of those numeric keys, which were 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, now we have air, earth, fire, water, and oh, where did the other one go? Oh, okay, so I misspelled elements. Let's refresh that. Elements. And now we have ether right there. And you can see that the console actually sorts these keys in alphabetical order. That's why ether is not the last value. And here you may have noticed that now we have a length of 0. So you may be wondering, why is it not 5? And here's where it gets a little bit confusing. So JavaScript, when it comes to creating associative keys in this way, JavaScript doesn't treat these values as array keys anymore. It treats them as object keys. And so in order to get the length of the object keys, we gotta have to use a different function. And for that, we're gonna have to use object keys, and then the name of our array elements dot length. And if I try typing elements dot length, we're still gonna get a 0. So also keep in mind that JavaScript actually treats all the arrays as objects. So if we type of elements, we're gonna get an object. But if we use the function or method is array and then type in our name of the array, we're gonna get true. So which one is it? Is it a type of object or is it an array? And this is where it can get a little bit confusing. And I actually don't recommend creating an associative array in this way, because we're gonna get all kinds of confusion, and we're gonna be mixing in the array. Is it an object? Is it an array? And we get undefined. Alright, so just remember to use this method instead of dot length when getting the values from the objects, when getting the total length from the objects. And keep in mind that my elements is an object. It's no longer treated as an array. So if we try the same method is array on this element, so this variable is no longer an array, it's treated as an object. Alright, now we're gonna go ahead and cover how to access array keys and values. And so you can see some more examples here in the console. All we're gonna be doing is accessing the keys now, and I'm gonna give you guys some examples. Alright, so let's start with our list. And the way that we access the key is to use the square brackets and then provide the key name. So I'm just gonna type list 0, and you can see that we're getting the key 1. If I type list, you can see that key 0 is associated with value 1. And now let's access our associative array, and the way that we access the associative array is to use square brackets and then double quotes. So let's access water, and you can see that this key is associated with that value. So you can see water, emotion. And the other way to access the value from the object is to use the dot notation. So you can also use myElements.water, and so that will work in the same way, because myElements, remember, is an object. So you guys can play around with the other arrays that we have and check out what their values are. Mixed. So now I'm just accessing all the values from the mixed array. Alright, so you get the idea. For the numeric arrays, you use square brackets and then the numeric key. And for the associative array, you can either use square brackets with the key name, or you can use the dot notation to access the array values. Alright, let's keep moving, and now we're gonna learn how to loop through the arrays. Gonna jump to that section, and you can see that we have our syntax here. So the first loop that we're gonna use is a simple for loop, and you can see here that I've commented that the for loop only works for numeric arrays. So only use for loop when it comes to numeric arrays, and this is what you would type in the console. So let's go ahead and loop through our list array, which is a numeric array. So first of all, list. Actually, let's loop through mixed array instead. Okay, so first we're gonna say for, and then we're gonna declare I as the variable and set its counter to 0, because remember that the array keys start their count from 0. So that's gonna be our key count. And then we're gonna say I is less than mix.length, which is the total length of the array. And then we're going to increase the I by 1. So it's gonna keep increasing the keys by 1, and it's gonna loop through all the keys. And then to output, we're gonna use console.log and say mixed square bracket I. So remember that we use the square brackets to access the array keys, and here we have an I, which is going to be counting from 0 all the way to the array length, which is 5. and it's going to output all the keys. So you can see that now we have all the keys being output, and that's how we use a for loop to loop through the numeric array. Now let's talk about how to loop through an associative array, and for that we gotta use a for in loop. So the for in loop is used to loop through objects or any array types. So we can loop through an associative array, a numeric array, or an object using the for in loop. So first we're gonna go ahead and create an object named cards with numeric properties as keys. So that's what I'm gonna do here, and we're gonna use the object literal notation, and I'm gonna create key value pairs of the 7 chakras. So since we've created the object with numeric keys, the for loop is still going to work. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that, but I'm also going to show you how to loop through the array with a for in loop, and you're going to see the difference between the two. So here, let's go ahead and type cards, and this is what our object looks like so far. So we're going to use the for, but this time, instead of setting the I count to 0, we're going to set it to 1, because that's where our count starts, from key 1. Also, this time we're going to say I is less than or equal to, and then instead of using the array name.length, we're going to use object keys, our object name.length, and then I++. And here we're saying, instead of using less than sign, we're using a less than or equal operator, because we're actually counting, we want the key to be equal to the total number of the length, because you remember that the for the other numeric array we started the count from 0, so the last count 4 was less than 5, and that's why we only use the less than operator instead of less than or equal. Here the number 7 is going to equal the total values which are inside of this array, because we start our count from 1. So that's why we use less than or equal operator here instead of just the less than sign. And then console keys I. Oh no, we gotta use instead of keys, we gotta use cards I. And now you can see that all of our values are printed out. So another way is to use the for in loop. And if you go back here, you can see that this is the syntax. So for let I in array name, very simple. And let's just go ahead and type that, for I in cards. And you can see that this is a much simpler way than typing all of that. Now we can just type the same thing, console.log cards I, and we get exactly the same thing. So definitely the for in loop is still recommended for that, because it's a much shorter code and looks a lot cleaner, even though we can accomplish the same thing with both. Alright, now let's go ahead and create another object named colors, but this time we're not going to use any quotes around the keys. If you guys remember, or if you watched the objects video, you can see that in the syntax we have a property name with a colon and a value, but you don't see any quotes around the property name. So we don't have to use any quotes to create the associative array object. So we're just going to say colors and then use the object literal notation, and I'm just going to create some colors with associations. Alright, now let's go ahead and loop through the colors object. So gonna type colors, and this is what our object looks like so far. So here, if we tried using the regular for loop, you guys can see that the setting the counter to 0 doesn't make any sense because our first key is blue. It's not 0 or 1 or any numeric key, so using the regular for loop doesn't make any sense here. So we're gonna go ahead and use the for in loop, and we're gonna set we're gonna create a variable key which is gonna represent our key names, and then say in colors, and then console.log and colors, which is the name of our object, and then key, which is going to be the name of our key. And that is how you loop through the objects. Now there's also different ways of looping through the objects or arrays, but I'm not going to cover them in this video because that's what we already covered in the loops video. And here I have a updated loops source code file, and as you can see that I've also added the outline and the syntax summary. So those are all the different ways to loop through, to use loops in JavaScript. And you can see that I have examples of looping through the arrays, so you guys can go ahead and re-download that source code if you have my Patreon subscription. So you can see that I have the regular for loop, while loop, do while, and then there's also the for in. So we have all the source code and syntax for all these loops. Alright, so the last thing that I want to show you guys is how to create new property names with the objects, which is something that we covered in the objects video, but I just want to review that. So let's type colors, and now suppose we wanted to add a new property, and for that we can just use the dot notation, say black for example, set the new value, and we can also use the square bracket notation as well. So in the same way that we would access these values with the key names, we can also create new values. So now if we type colors, you can see that these properties have been added to our object. And that's it for this JavaScript arrays video. Now I'm gonna be creating a video soon letting you guys know what kind of improvements and changes are coming to my videos, and what kind of new benefits my Patreons are gonna be getting, because I realize you guys mostly subscribe to my Patreon because of these source files. So that's where I decided to make a lot of improvements with the outline, with the syntax code, and with the ability to jump anywhere in a section using the syntax. So we're gonna have our code, we're gonna have all the examples that we can do in the console, and we're also gonna have this workspace here where you guys will see all the diagrams that I've ever basically all the diagrams that I've ever created with Clever Techie. So it's going to make it a lot easier for us to combine all the things that we're learning together, because we're gonna have them nicely organized in this kind of a new folder structure. And I'm also gonna be including libraries, which is going to be custom functions which we're gonna be collecting to reuse in our code, because we don't want to type the same functionality over and over again. So I'm going to be describing these functions in a lot of detail. We use in the comments, and we're going to be learning a lot about Visual Studio Code. It comes with a bunch of really nice themes. If you get tired looking at the dark theme, you can always switch over to this light theme, and they got a really strong community and people just contributing and working on all kinds of extension. And that's just some of the things that you can be looking forward to. I'm going to be making a separate video covering all the features, improvements, and updates coming to my videos. But that's just a quick overview for you guys. Alright, so if you guys like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time. Clever Techie out.